let's just get right into this review for season 6 of Love is Blind, and we're going to start off talking about Britney and Ken's relationship. Now, in the pods, I thought that Britney and Ken were a really good match because they got along so well, they had the same values, and they seemed like they had the same vision for their future. And they were one of the first couples to get engaged this season. They didn't seem to really want to make any connections with anybody else. And when they met each other for the first time in person, they seemed like they were very attracted to one another. However, that was very short-lived. Because when they ended up going on their little getaway to the Dominican Republic, that's when you can see that there was a lot of cracks in their relationship. I feel like Britney was very open to the process. She was attracted to Ken and she wanted to be with him and she was very affectionate. But Ken kind of pulled back from her very heavily and I really didn't understand why. And she had brought it to Ken's attention multiple times while they were in the Dominican Republic that she felt like he wasn't attracted to her because he wasn't being as affectionate as she was being towards him. But he explained to her multiple times that it was just new to him and he wasn't very comfortable at first, which is understandable because they made a connection behind a wall. But then when you have to connect the voice to the person themselves, it's kind of hard to do that for a while. And so I can understand where he was coming from, but then you can see that he wasn't actually interested in her. Now, some people will say that when the group ended up meeting up with each other for the first time in the Dominican Republic and they got to meet the other couples, that when AD and Ken ended up having that one-on-one conversation about interracial relationships, that's the reason why Ken ended up pulling back from Britney. However, I don't think that was the case. I don't think that Ken really wanted to be with Britney after a while, and it had nothing to do with the conversation that he had with AD. And personally, as somebody who is biracial, I have a white father and a black mother, I will say that the conversation that AD and Ken had in the Dominican Republic was something that's really important for interracial couples to have, because if you're going to be together, you're going to have to realize that there are going to be some challenges that you're going to have to face. And then on top of that, when you have a mixed child, it's important to agree on the way you're going to raise them. To me, I think it's important for the mixed race child to spend equal amount of time around their white side of the family and also around their black side of their family so they get a sense of who they are on both sides. And I don't think that AD was coming from a bad place when she brought this conversation up. And Ken did end up telling Britney about the conversation that he had with AD and told Britney that he didn't think that AD was coming from a bad place. And I think it was a really good conversation that Britney and Ken ended up having, so I don't think that there was anything wrong with that topic being brought up. Britney was very affectionate to Ken a lot of the time, and she felt a little bit insecure in the relationship with him because she started to feel like he wasn't attracted to her because he wasn't giving her the same affection. And there were moments where she tried to get a conversation started and he would just get really quiet and he wouldn't have anything to say, and I feel like it was making her feel very uneasy. So when they went to move in with each other, you can tell that Britney was very excited to move in with him, but when they got to the house and she was trying to sort things out and unpack, he wasn't really paying attention to her because his eyes were glued to his phone. And to me, she had a lot of patience in that situation because when I'm talking to somebody and they're on their phone and they're ignoring me, I get really pissed off and I probably would have turned that into a really big fight. But Britney has a lot of patience and she didn't end up doing that. However, their time living together was very short-lived because when she brought it to his attention that she felt some type of way about the lack of affection that he was giving her and also that he came home really, really late, he really wasn't receptive to what she was saying. She told him that she didn't feel like she was craving him anymore because they both did say that they weren't going to have sex with each other until they got married, and they agreed on that, which I think is good. But at the same time, she felt like they should have at least built up some type of sexual tension with each other because even though they agreed not to have sex with each other until they got married, making out with each other, touching and doing a little bit of foreplay will get the sexual tension rising so that you crave each other, so that when it does come time for you to get intimate with one another, you're both excited about it and you want each other. And she said that she wasn't really feeling that. And to me, he got really offended by it, but he wasn't receptive to what she was saying at all because he was basically trying to make it seem like she was creating something out of nothing. And to me, that was him being very dismissive of her feelings because although he's right, every day is not going to be a good day. They just moved in together and they've only known each other in person for about 4 or 5 days, so I don't understand why things are going so bad so quickly. And then he tells her that because she doesn't have a craving for him, he decided that he was going to end things. And she was okay with things ending, but she did break down in tears because obviously she really wanted this to work out. And you could tell because she was the only one that was really trying, in my opinion. But he didn't really care about her crying because while she was crying, he didn't even try to console her. He just walked away, called one of his friends up and told them that he was on his way to their house. And that was it. And Britney just sat there crying by herself. And to me, he was wrong for that. And right now, there are a lot of rumors about Ken not being straight, and I think it came from one of his family members. I think one of his cousins posted on social media that he's actually gay, and then people are in these Facebook groups and they're exposing how he is gay with receipts. So if he really is gay, I don't think that it was right for him to go on this show and date women, knowing that he didn't want to be with them. I just don't think that that was fair to Britney because he robbed her of this experience. Now, I don't know if he really is gay. It's just a rumor right now because I haven't really seen the proof of it. But if he really is gay, then he really robbed Britney of this experience because she could have made a bond and a connection with one of the other guys, and she probably would have ended up being on the show a little bit longer, and she maybe would have been able to find her person. Now let's talk about the love triangle between Matthew, AD, and Amber when they were still in the pods. Now Matthew was very standoffish, quiet, and kind of awkward. He didn't really interact with the other guys in the guys lounge, and then when he went into the pods and he went on the dates with a lot of these women, he was really quiet and awkward and didn't really know what to say. However, when he did go into the pods and go on the dates with AD and Amber, he opened up and came out of his shell. And I will say, when Matt finally started opening up to AD and Amber, I kind of liked him because I felt like he was really sweet and probably misunderstood. And I think it's okay to be socially awkward, but you'll get out of that once you meet somebody who brings you out of your shell. And I felt like AD and Amber did that for Matthew. However, I learned really quickly that he wasn't who he was trying to portray himself to be. He was basically telling AD and Amber everything that they wanted to hear, but especially AD, from what we were able to see, they showed more of AD and Matthew's relationship than they showed him and Amber. But after one of AD's pod dates with Matthew, she ended up going back to the women's lounge where she heard Amber telling some of the girls about her connection that she has with Matthew. And a lot of the things that Amber was saying that Matthew was saying to her on their dates was the same things that he was saying to AD. But first, AD didn't say anything to Amber about it because she wanted to talk to Matthew about it first. So when AD ended up bringing this to Matthew's attention, he started telling her that it wasn't true and that he had a stronger connection with her. And so she was falling for it. She definitely was. But then he started telling her how he wanted to ask her father for her hand in marriage. And he said the same thing to Amber because when AD went back to the room and she was talking to the girls, Amber said that he said the same thing to her. And so Amber was really distraught about finding out this information. She started breaking down crying, and I love that AD was there for her. I love that the two of them did not go against each other to fight over a guy, because a lot of the times when you watch these relationship shows, you see the women fight each other over a man, and they did not do that. They supported each other, and I think that that was great. Unfortunately, Amber was so hurt that she decided to leave. So when AD ended up having her final pod date with Matthew, she told him that her and Amber talked and they realized that he was telling them the same things, and Amber was so upset that she decided to leave. And Matthew started going on and on about how he was the underdog and how America was going to be on his side because of he was the underdog. And then he decided that he was going to leave because he realized that he made an ass of himself, and he said that he felt really bad that Amber decided to leave because of him. So that was the end of the love triangle between Matthew, AD, and Amber. Now let's talk about Johnny and Amy right now, because the two of them made a strong connection from the very beginning, and to be honest with you, they didn't really give anybody else a chance because they were too into each other. And they were so into each other that they were the first couple to get engaged, and they got engaged pretty quickly, but I thought that they were really cute and sweet together. And then on top of that, when they were able to see each other for the very first time, he was very attracted to her and he gave her a ton of compliments, and she complimented him as well because she did say that she found him attractive. He just wasn't the type that she usually went for. And to me, this couple in particular embodied what this show was about, because he was not the type that she would usually go for, but she decided to step out of her comfort zone and give him a chance anyway, because the guys that she usually went for, it wasn't working with them. Obviously, that's why she ended up on this show. And so she decided to take a leap of faith and go with him, and it ended up working out in her favor. And to me, they were the only ones that acted like a couple that was really interested in each other, because when they all got together in the DR and they got to meet the other couples, to me, they were the ones that were all over each other the most. And Johnny was all about Amy. He didn't flirt with any of the other girls, and he didn't try to reconnect with any of the other girls that he may have had connections with in the pods. He was just all about Amy, and I thought that that was good. And to me, they were one of the only couples that talked about the really important things that you should discuss before you decide to get married. And finances was one of those things that they talked about, because he said that he's a little bit frugal sometimes because he wants to retire early and he wants to make sure that he's very financially stable before he decides to have any children. And she agreed with him on that. They both stated that they didn't want to have any children right now at the moment, and that the first thing that they wanted to do was buy a house together. They both agreed on that. The only thing that they didn't really agree on is about the birth control thing. He felt like it was important for Amy to be on birth control so that they wouldn't get pregnant, but the thing about it is that people get pregnant all the time on birth control, so it's not always effective, but I can understand where he's coming from. However, I agree with Amy that she shouldn't have to get on birth control because he's afraid to have a baby, because some people have very bad reactions to birth control. I'm one of those people who had a bad reaction to birth control. Not everybody has the same experiences, but sometimes for some people it doesn't really work out with birth control. And he wasn't forcing her to get on birth control, because they also talked about him getting a vasectomy. They're just trying to figure out what's right for them. And I think it was good that they had these very important conversations, because a lot of the other couples did not have them. They did have one hiccup in their relationship, and that was that Amy told him that if she didn't get her father's blessing, that she wasn't going to marry him because her father was skeptical about this whole process. However, when her father ended up meeting Johnny, he really liked him and he gave them the blessing, which I think was really good because Amy seemed really relieved about it. And not only was Amy's family very welcoming and accepting of Johnny, but Johnny's family was also very warm and welcoming to Amy as well. And then I loved watching Johnny's family and Amy's family bond together, because that makes a good relationship when both families can come together and they get along and they're all welcoming to each other. And spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't watched the season yet, Amy and Johnny are the only two that ended up actually saying I do at the altar. They got married. They had a very beautiful ceremony. She looked great in her dress. It was very beautiful. They had a really good time, and I'm happy for the two of them, because I knew from watching this show from the very beginning that the two of them were going to be the ones that got married. Now, let's talk about the love triangle between Jimmy, Jessica, and Chelsea. Now, when I was watching this from the beginning, I felt like Jimmy had a stronger connection with Jessica than he did with Chelsea. I just felt like they had a stronger connection and they opened up to each other a little bit more. Like, to me, they went deeper into their conversations than he did with Chelsea. With Chelsea, it seemed like they laughed a lot. They didn't really go that deep with each other, and to me, they just had fun together, and I feel like that's the reason why he ultimately ended up choosing Chelsea, is because he thought that things would be easier with her than it would be with Jessica. However, he ended up finding out in the long run that that wasn't actually true. Jimmy started to pull away from Jessica when she decided to reveal to him that she had a 10-year-old daughter. Now look, I can understand why he was apprehensive about it, because he probably wasn't ready to be a father at this point, and she wasn't asking him to be a father to her child. But being a step parent is a really big step, because at the end of the day, he's not coming into her daughter's life as a boyfriend. He's coming into her daughter's life as a husband, so it definitely could be difficult for him. And then at the same time, he did say in his confessional that he didn't know if her daughter would be receptive to him. I think it's okay for somebody who doesn't have children to not want to be with somebody who does. However, I do feel like he judged her a little bit too much on that, because not only did she say that her daughter is 10 years old, so it's not like he was going to be changing diapers and chasing a toddler around and making bottles, but also she said that she has a really good co-parenting relationship with the father of her daughter, and that they haven't been together in a really long time, so it's not like there was going to be any drama. Jimmy started to really pull back from Jessica when he found out that she had a child, because initially I think that he was going to pick her over Chelsea until he found that out, and Jessica could sense that he was pulling away from her. And at one point on one of their dates, she ended up writing him a letter. It was a letter to her husband, and it was for him because she thought that he was going to eventually be her husband. And he read it out loud, and he got really, really quiet. And obviously she was offended by that, because him being quiet after reading this really deep, sentimental letter that she wrote for him was really hurtful to her. And that's the reason why she kind of got snappy with him, because she felt like he was wasting her time, because he wasn't really saying how he felt about her. And she knew that he was also talking to Chelsea and forming a connection with her. So she felt like he needed to be upfront and honest with how he was feeling. And I feel like she was right about that, because him not telling her that he wasn't interested anymore because she had a child really messed up this opportunity for her, because she could have built a connection with somebody else on the show had he would have told her sooner that he wasn't feeling her after she told him that she had a child. And I think after she snapped on him like that, I think he was done with her. But instead of telling her right then and there that he was done with her, he decided to go on a date with Chelsea in the pods and tell Chelsea that he was in love with her and that he wanted to be with her and that she was the only one that he wanted. And when Chelsea went back to her room and she was really excited and she was talking to some of the girls about it, Jessica was sitting there on the couch and she saw that Chelsea was really excited. And that's when Laura ended up coming up to Jessica and telling her that she should just pack her stuff and go home so that she doesn't get hurt. And that's when she realized that he told Chelsea that he loved her. And my heart broke for Jessica during this scene because she was crying so bad, and I felt bad for her because I feel like she's a beautiful woman and I feel like she was genuine and I feel like she was really there for the right reasons. I think she really wanted to find a husband, and because that didn't happen for her, she was really upset. And in the last meeting that Jessica and Jimmy had in the pod, she ended up confronting him about telling Chelsea that he loved her because she felt like it was wrong for him to not tell her that he was done with her before going and telling Chelsea that he loved her. At that point, he had made up his mind that he was going to choose Chelsea, and he should have ended things with Jessica at that point. And I don't think that Jessica was wrong for the way that she was speaking to Jimmy, because he wasn't being upfront about his feelings and she was really getting annoyed by that. And he was just beating around the bush to tell Jessica that he was done with her and that he was moving forward with Chelsea. And I like that she told him that when he sees what he missed out on, he's going to need his EpiPen, because she is a very beautiful woman. And I don't think that it was wrong for her to, boost herself up, because she is beautiful and she should be confident in herself. And if some guy is not able to see that she's worth it, then she needs to move forward with somebody else. And so I think she handled him very well. And he was able to see really quickly that he might have made a mistake in picking Chelsea, because Jessica comes up a lot in Jimmy and Chelsea's relationship and a lot of their arguments that they had this season. Now, let's talk about the love triangle between Chelsea, Jimmy, and Trevor, because I thought it was a little bit weird that he ended up choosing Chelsea as well, because Jessica didn't have any other guy that she was considering being with from what we're able to see, but Chelsea was also dating Trevor and she had a really strong connection with him. So it was weird to me that he went for the girl that also had a connection with another guy. To me, Chelsea and Trevor were a lot more compatible with each other. They seemed to have the same type of personality, and she did say that he was more her type physically than Jimmy was, so I was confused as to why she ended up picking Jimmy, but she said that she just felt like Jimmy would fit into her life a lot better than Trevor would, and that's the reason why she didn't end up picking him. Now, I didn't really feel like Jimmy and Chelsea had a really strong connection, other than the fact that they kept painting pictures of what their life would be like together, and I feel like the only reason why Jimmy chose her is because he thought that it would be a lot easier being with Chelsea than it would be being with Jessica. And initially, I really felt bad for Trevor when Chelsea decided that she was going to choose Jimmy over him, because I felt like he really poured his heart out to Chelsea, and Chelsea was the only one that he was trying to make a connection with. So it was kind of weird to me that she also decided to pick a guy who had a strong connection with another girl instead of picking the guy that was choosing her. But there are a lot of rumors going around that Trevor had a girlfriend the entire time that he was on this show. And if that's true, I feel like Netflix and Love is Blind needs to be really serious about vetting these people, because nobody who's in a relationship should be able to get on the show. And so to me, I think that either way, Chelsea would have ended up alone, because I don't feel like things would have worked out with Trevor, just like it didn't really work out with Jimmy. Now, I will say, I think it's funny that Chelsea and Jimmy decided to choose each other, because I think they chose each other for the wrong reasons. Mainly Jimmy. I really think that he chose Chelsea because she told him that people say she looks like Megan Fox. Now, she did say, to be fair, she did say that other people say that she looks like Megan Fox, but that she doesn't see it. But to me, she could have been being a little bit manipulative as to why she brought that to his attention, because she felt like that was going to get her picked, and that's exactly what ended up happening, because when she told Jimmy that she looks like Megan Fox, or that people say she looks like Megan Fox, he got really excited and said that he wanted to marry her right then and there. And so he was excited about the fact that he thought that's what she was going to look like. I feel like she felt like she she needed to say that because she knew that the connection that Jimmy and Jessica had was stronger. And then I feel like Chelsea was intimidated with how beautiful Jessica actually is. And I'm not saying that Chelsea is unattractive, because I think that Chelsea is pretty. Do I think that she looks like Megan Fox? No. I mean, I can see it in her eyes, but that's just about it. But I do feel like Jessica is a little bit more attractive, and I think she knew that, Jessica was going to be more of Jimmy's type. And you could see the disappointment all over Jimmy's face when he first saw Chelsea in person, because he was disappointed at the fact that she didn't look the way that she said that she did. And again, to be fair, she didn't say she thinks that she looks like Megan Fox. She said that people say she looks like Megan Fox, although, like I said before, I think she said that for a reason, because she wanted to get picked, and ultimately that's what ended up happening. But you can tell that he was not attracted to Chelsea. She seemed more attracted to him the entire show than he was to her. And he made a lot of comments that made her feel uncomfortable in their first meeting. Like, he said that after he got into it with Jessica and she chewed him out, he was getting ready to go home, and Chelsea felt some type of way about that. I honestly feel like she was insecure about Jessica the entire time that they were together, because she kept bringing up Jessica all the time. And Jimmy and Chelsea were one of those couples who fought a lot on the show, because as soon as they went to the DR, that's when a lot of their problems started, because they ended up getting together with the other couples on the beach. And okay, look, Chelsea definitely was insecure, but I also feel like Jimmy was wrong a lot, and he played on her insecurities, because I don't understand why he would think it was okay to make comments about how he liked AD's body right in front of Chelsea. That was disrespectful to me, and I can understand why she was really upset about that. And then he was being really flirtatious with AD, and then he attempted to flirt with both Laura and Amy right in front of Chelsea's face. So to me, he was wrong too in that situation. But I will say Chelsea does like to argue, because once she brought it to Jimmy's attention that she felt uncomfortable and didn't like him flirting with AD and talking about her body, he did apologize to her for it and said that he wouldn't do it again, and she still kept the argument going, and I just don't understand why she wants to argue all night long. I mean, the man acknowledged that he was wrong and he said he was sorry. That's all he can say at this point, because what's done is done, and she just wanted to keep the argument going, and I can tell that he was getting really annoyed by it. I mean, his actions was the reason why they got into an argument, but her inability to let things go is why the argument continued, and I don't feel like that was something that he wanted to deal with Chelsea. From what I was able to see, I feel like Chelsea and Jimmy had the most fights, and I just don't understand why. I feel like Chelsea's insecurities were one of the biggest reasons why they didn't get along so much, because there was one episode where she ended up bringing her friends over to the house, and she was complaining to them that he only kissed her one time that day, and I just don't understand how many times she thinks that he needs to kiss her in a day. Every day, he's not going to be lovey-dovey and all over you and in your face, and I feel like she needs way too much attention and way too much validation, and that's not something that a lot of people want to deal with. I feel like Chelsea should have learned to love herself a little bit more and not be insecure before she decided to get into a relationship, let alone a marriage with somebody, because her insecurities was a big part of why people had an issue with her during this season. And her and Jimmy ended up getting into a really heated argument one time, because she was drinking and she complained that he wasn't paying enough attention to her and that he didn't kiss her as many times as she wanted him to. And he was getting really annoyed by her because he feels like he was doing his best and she just was not accepting it. Now, do I feel like Jimmy could have tried harder with Chelsea? Yes, but do I feel like she was being a little bit too clingy? Yes, she was being very clingy. And as soon as Jimmy told her that he felt smothered and he felt like she was being too clingy, Chelsea got really offended by that. And I understand why that would hurt her feelings, because her being all over him is not something that she wants him to see as something negative. But when you're doing too much, it does affect people, because people need their space. She also ended up going off on him one day because he went out with his friends for an hour and a half because it was one of his friends' birthdays and he had a couple of drinks, and she was really pissed off about it, and she was yelling at him saying that she doesn't want to be with the type of guy who likes to go out often. But I think it's okay for the man to go out for an hour and a half to see his friends. I mean, people are allowed to have friendships outside of you and are able to go out with their friends and family members without you being there, and you shouldn't complain about it. As long as he doesn't do it all the time and he makes you feel secure, you really shouldn't have an issue with it. I feel like her issue with him going out is because she didn't trust him around his female friends. Because Jimmy did let Chelsea meet two of his closest female friends, and she seemed okay when she went to meet with them, but then all of a sudden when he decided to go out for drinks with all of his friends, she had an issue with it, and I think it's because she knew that the female friends were there. Now, let me just say this. I don't think that Chelsea's feelings were invalid when it comes to these female friends, because he did tell her off camera that he slept with one of these girls that he introduced her to. And even though he said it only happened one time, obviously Chelsea is going to feel some type of way if he's texting, calling every day, and then going out, hanging out with this person who he said he slept with one time. It's really an uncomfortable situation, especially because Chelsea is a flight attendant. So she's out of town a lot. And she said that when she was out of town, he was spending time with these girls, one of which that he slept with. And so I can understand Chelsea's concerns when it comes to this situation. However, I think she handled the situation completely wrong. Because number one, he did not want the information out there on camera that he slept with this female friend. He told Chelsea off camera about it because he didn't want it to be put out there. And she specifically got drunk and said it on camera, and he felt some type of way about it. And I feel like his feelings are valid as well. And then on top of that, Chelsea has an ex-boyfriend that she's still friends with too. However, she did say that she doesn't text and call him all the time, and that they don't hang out by themselves, so it's not really the same. I feel like Jimmy could compromise a little bit, because I feel like his female friends are a little bit problematic as well. Because if I had a guy friend and he got into a relationship with a woman, I would not want her to feel uncomfortable with having me around. So I would not hang out with him by myself. It would have to be a group setting, or she would have to be there. And I would not be texting and calling his phone, especially all the time like that. That really makes people feel uncomfortable. So I do feel like Chelsea's feelings were valid. I just feel like she handled it wrong. And then she started accusing him of hanging out with Jessica behind her back. And look, I feel like she's always been insecure about Jessica, because number one, she knew that Jessica physically is more of Jimmy's type. And then on top of that, Jimmy saw a picture of her because, Jeremy showed him a picture of her, and Jeremy was talking about how she looks similar to a Kardashian. And so obviously that made Chelsea feel insecure. I feel like she shouldn't be putting all her insecurities on Jimmy though, because it's not his job to make her feel good about herself. And I know people will disagree with me for that, but I feel like he can tell her that he thinks that she's attractive, but unless she feels it herself, then no matter how many times he tells it to her, she's still going to feel insecure. So I feel like those are things that she needed to work on before deciding to get into a relationship. And I feel like when Jimmy saw Jessica for the first time, when they had that group meetup, he was attracted to her, and he said that in his interview that he was very attracted to Jessica. And I think he was more attracted to Jessica than he was to Chelsea. But at the end of the day, I feel like his conversation one-on-one that he had with Jessica was respectful. I don't feel like the two of them crossed the line in any way, shape, or form. I don't feel like they flirted with each other. I feel like Trevor and Chelsea's conversation was a little bit more disrespectful, because they were being very flirtatious with each other. Now, in the season finale of Love is Blind season 6, Chelsea and Jimmy ended up going to try on tuxedos and dresses, and then they went on this really nice date and had a lot of fun together. And at the end of the date, Jimmy ended up breaking things off with Chelsea. He said that the reason why he broke things off is because she threw in his face that he slept with his female friend, and he felt like he did the right thing by telling her that he slept with his female friend so that she wouldn't be in the dark about it. And I do think that it was good that Jimmy told Chelsea that he slept with this female friend one time, because a lot of guys would have hid that from their girlfriend. And so I think that she should have been receptive to him telling her that. However, she did feel uncomfortable by it, and she decided to blurt it out in front of the cameras, and that's not something that he wanted. He was being very protective of this female friend. And look, I understand that he's going to be more so protective over this female friend because he knew her before he knew Chelsea. He's just getting to know Chelsea. But to me, I feel like if he's not ready to make a compromise and kind of pull back just a little bit from his female friends, then he shouldn't be in a serious relationship either. Unless he gets into a relationship with a woman that doesn't care about his relationship with his female friends. But I feel like that's something that he should have brought up to Chelsea before they decided to get engaged. Like, they should have talked about that in the pods, that he has these female friends that he's really close to, that he talks to every day, and he sees them very often, just to see if Chelsea would be okay with it. But instead, he decided to tell her that once they got engaged and once they decided to move in together, which I don't think is fair. Now, I do think that Chelsea was right though. I think that Jimmy knew the whole time, from the second that he saw her for the first time in person, that he did not want to marry her. I think he knew all along that he didn't want to. I think he just wrote it out a little bit. I think he tried, but I think he knew deep down inside that Chelsea was not the one for him. And I think a lot of it had to do with physically he wasn't attracted to her the way that he thought he was going to be because of the Megan Fox comment. I do think that it was good that Jimmy broke things off with Chelsea before they went to the altar, because I think it would have been more hurtful had he done it with all her family and friends there, wasting all their time showing up to this wedding, and then get there and he tells her that he doesn't at the altar. I don't think that that would have been right. So I do think that it was good that he told her beforehand, because it is humiliating to go to this wedding, have your dress on, look all beautiful, start crying, getting emotional with all your family watching, and then the guy tells you no. So to me, he did the right thing by breaking it off before then. Now let's talk about the love triangle between AD, Matthew, and Clay, because AD had a very strong connection with Matthew, more so than Clay in my opinion, because I think that she could tell that Clay was a player based on the things that he was saying in the pods, and so she more so had a stronger connection with Matthew. And when Clay found out that AD also had a connection with Matthew, he got really upset. Like, he kind of went off on her, and to me that was a red flag, and she should have cut things off with Clay at that point, because they weren't even together yet. Like, they didn't even meet face to face, and he was already talking to her some type of way. And the reason why he got so upset is because it was a bruise to his ego that she was feeling another guy too, especially a guy who acts like and looks like Matthew. He felt some type of way about that because he didn't feel like Matthew was on his level, and so he felt some type of way that Matthew was his competition. And that's the only reason why I think that Clay pursued AD so heavily, is because it was a bruise to his ego that she was feeling another guy, and so it was his job to make sure that he ended up winning in that competition. He saw the whole thing as a competition, and he wanted to get rid of his competition. And once Matthew decided that he was going to leave because he got caught telling AD and Amber the same things, that's when Clay decided that he was going to move in and win over AD, and that's exactly what ended up happening. And Clay has a lot of red flags, and I feel like AD knew the red flags. She just kind of overlooked them because she really wanted to be married, and I don't understand why she allowed her desperation to be married to allow her to get involved with a guy who didn't really want to be with her to begin with, because he was very superficial. I mean, he told her in the pods that if he meets her in person and she doesn't look the way that he wants her to look and he's not attracted to her, he's not going to propose, and he's going to end things right then and there. And although I respect his honesty, because to be honest with you, he was telling her the truth about these things and she decided not to walk away from it, I do think that once he saw her and realized that he wasn't attracted to her, he should have ended things right then and there. Because in my opinion, he was not physically attracted to AD. I think he liked her body, but I don't think that he was attracted to her. And the reason why I say this is because she was gassing up the way that he looks more than he ever gassed up the way that she looked. She was talking about how handsome he was all the time, and to me, he didn't do the same thing to her. And I think she's an attractive woman, and I think that she could have did better than him, to be honest with you. Clay would basically tell AD all the time that he was probably going to cheat, because he would say things like, I don't want to let you down. And he was telling her that he never saw a successful marriage because his parents were married for 24 years and his father cheated the entire time. And he also said that his father even brought him with him to cheat on his mother. So he wasn't really feeling like he could be faithful in a relationship. And AD heard these things and she still didn't cut things off. And I really truly do not know why. When AD and Clay moved in together, he wasn't spending enough time with her. He would leave the house in the morning and not come back until the next day. And when they ended up finally meeting up with Clay's mother and sister, she brought this to his attention in front of his mother. And his mother was telling him that if he really loves somebody, he'll make time for them. But he was harping on the fact that AD doesn't work as much as him. And to me, that was one of the reasons why he didn't want to marry AD as well. Because in the season finale of Love is Blind season 6, he did an interview after they, broke up at the altar. And he said that one of the reasons why he had an issue with AD is because he didn't know what her finances looked like. And I think that he thought that he was going to be the one that had to pay for everything. And that was one of his issues. And look, I think that he was just making excuses at that point, because if he really wanted to know how things were going to go between the two of them financially, they should have talked about that in the pause or as soon as the two of them ended up deciding to get engaged, just like Amy and Johnny did. I feel like Amy and Johnny were the only ones that had the really important conversations that you need to have before you decide to get married. And if Clay was serious about AD, he should have brought that up in conversation with her. Clay also did not care about the way that he spoke to AD, like the time in the pods when he went off on her because she had a connection with Matthew as well. And then one time they were sitting down eating, and AD was talking about how she counts calories to keep her body in shape. And he said that she didn't need to count calories to keep her body in shape as long as she continued to work out. And he told her that if she got too big, he would let her know about it. And the way that he said it was kind of rude. Like, I'm paraphrasing it because that's not exactly what he said. But for the most part, in so many words, he was saying that if he felt like she was getting fat, he would tell her that she needed to get in the gym and go work out. And she really didn't like the way that he worded it. And I feel like that was a huge red flag. But like I said, he told her in the beginning when they were in the pods that looks really mattered to him. So I don't really know why she was surprised. And AD's mom really liked Clay when she met him, and I feel like her mom is very wise because I feel like her mom was right when she told Clay and AD that whatever happened with their parents in the past, with their marriages, that's not something that they should bring into their own marriages and relationships because it didn't happen to them and they have a chance to do things differently. And she was right about that. However, I feel like she was wrong when it came to reading Clay because to me, it was obvious from the very beginning that Clay did not want to be with AD. I don't even think he came on this show to get married. I don't know the real reason why he decided to sign up for this show. And I feel like AD's mom is a very wise woman, and I think she's very smart, and I think she can read people. And I feel like had AD been more honest with the way that Clay has been treating her, her mother would have told her not to even fight for the relationship with him. But because AD made it seem like he was such an amazing guy and he really wanted to be with her and he was really trying, that's the reason why AD's mom told him that he was worth fighting for. The huge issue that I have with Clay is that he really wasted AD's time and kind of made her look like a fool because the entire time most of us watching this knew that Clay wasn't going to go through with getting married to AD. We could all tell for the most part that he didn't even want to be with her. And despite the fact that the red flags with Clay were right in AD's face, he did lead her on a lot because he was telling her that he loved her and that he was falling in love with her and that he could see himself marrying her and see himself having her as a wife. And then at the very end of the episode, when he decided not to go through with the marriage, he said that he didn't see her as his wife and said that he wasn't in love with her. So why didn't he tell her that in the first place? I know people use the word narcissist a lot, and I don't like when people use that because I think they use it for everybody when it doesn't really fit. But for him to sit there and dangle marriage in her face, knowing that that's something that she really wanted, knowing that he wasn't going to give that to her but allow her to get really excited for me, screams narcissism in my opinion. AD was super excited to get married. She was going to say yes, and he knew that she was going to say yes to him at the altar. She was very excited. She was gassing herself up. She looked beautiful in the dress. Her mother and her whole family was there, and they were very excited for her. And I really don't think that she thought that he was going to say no to her because he has been kind of leading her on a bit. And the fact that he decided to wait until they got to the altar to say no is crazy to me because even though Jimmy was wrong for leading Chelsea on, at least he told Chelsea that he didn't want to marry her before she got dressed up and went to the altar. Whereas I feel like Clay purposely waited until AD got really excited to get married and waited until she got to the altar to say that he didn't want to marry her in front of everybody. I think he purposely waited until then, and I really don't know why. Maybe he wanted some type of clout, and that's the reason why he got on the show and wrote it out to the very end. But to me, that was just really wrong. To me, the best part about Clay and AD's story was the fact that AD's mom and Clay's mom were very wise and they shared a lot of their very wise opinions throughout the show. And then on top of that, they were very supportive of each other and they got along really well. I really loved seeing that. And when Clay said no to AD at the altar, Clay's mother pulled him aside and told him that if he knew that marriage wasn't something that he wanted, he should have never let it get to this point where he's saying no at the altar, and I completely agree. And I'm not really feeling Clay's father because he sat there and dapped him up and basically said that he didn't do anything wrong and that if he knew that marriage wasn't for him, that he made the right decision to say no to AD. The problem is he should have said no to AD a long time ago. He should have never proposed, and he should have never even came on a show like this where the end goal for this show is to end up married. Like, why did he even come on the show? And his father dismissing his negative actions towards AD was wrong. Clay's mother and father ended up having a conversation after the wedding was over, and it was a really important conversation that I think a lot of people needed to see. She basically told Clay's father that the reason why Clay has issues with commitment and getting married, and the reason why he sat up there and rejected AD at the altar the way that he did, is because he never saw a successful marriage, and she feels like his father needs to take accountability for that because he's the one that was unfaithful in the marriage that Clay was able to see as a child. He even took Clay with him to cheat on Clay's mother, so he was wrong in that situation, and I felt like he did need to take accountability for that. And Clay's mom did say that she was wrong for even staying in the marriage as long as she did, knowing that he was cheating on her, so I like that she was able to take accountability for her part in the situation as well. And when Clay's father told her that Clay needs to find a woman like his mother, she told Clay's father that, yeah, he got with her and she was a good woman, but he didn't treat her well when he had her, and so that's not something that he should be saying. And that's true. He shouldn't be saying that Clay needs to find a woman like his mother, because what's going to happen is he's going to find a woman like his mother that's faithful and loyal, and then he's going to cheat on her and put her through the same things that his mother went through with his father. Now, AD had way too much patience for Clay for wasting her time, because he ended up going to see her and talk to her and told her that he does love her and he can see her as his wife, lying because he did an interview before talking to her, saying to the camera that he didn't see her as his wife and said that he was not in love with her. So why is he lying to this girl's face when we have it on camera of him saying the complete opposite? And then he was telling her that he still wanted to be with her and that he's not going anywhere. He's just not ready to be married, and he kept kissing her, and I don't understand why she sat there and allowed him to kiss her. Like, she should not have allowed him to speak to her at all. But one thing I will say is that AD was claiming that she was blindsided, and to me, she wasn't blindsided, because he was telling her the entire time that he wasn't ready to be married, and to me, he showed her that he wasn't really interested, so to me, she was not blindsided. But I really felt bad for AD, because I don't feel like she deserved that. I mean, she ended up connecting with two of the guys on the show that were not genuine and were not there for genuine reasons, and that's Matthew and Clay, and I feel bad that she didn't make a connection with one of the other guys who was really there for the right reasons. I think that this was really messed up what Clay did to her. Now, let's end this video talking about the love triangle between Laura, Jeremy, and Sarah Ann. Now, Jeremy and Sarah Ann had a really playful, fun relationship in the pods. They got along really well. They joked a lot with each other, and I think they had a lot of sexual energy with each other, whereas Jeremy's connection that he had with Laura was more on a deeper level. They talked about more deeper things. He opened up a little bit more to her, and then on top of that, they had the same vision for how they wanted their future to look like, and I feel like that played a huge part in why Jeremy ended up choosing Laura over Sarah Ann. I think Laura and Jeremy were attracted to each other physically, but I think that they weren't necessarily each other's type, and I think that they knew that as soon as they saw each other. And they didn't really get along that well, and we were able to see that as soon as they went on their getaway to the Dominican Republic. As soon as they got around the rest of the group, they really didn't get along that well, because when they met up with all the other couples, Jeremy ended up having diarrhea of the mouth, and he ended up telling Clay and AD that Laura told him to bean dip AD, and AD knew exactly what Jeremy was talking about, because this is probably like some type of inside joke between her and Laura. Basically, it's when you smack somebody in their boobs, and Laura told Jeremy to do that to AD. Now, she claims that she was joking about it and that she didn't really want Jeremy to do that to AD, but AD was a little bit upset about it. Mainly Clay. Clay was really upset about it, and I think he had a reason to, because why would you tell a guy to put his hands on another woman's body? It just didn't make any sense to me, and it was distasteful of Laura to do. However, I don't think that it needed to turn into a huge fight between Laura and Jeremy. Laura told Jeremy that she was embarrassed by him doing that because he went back and told something that she told him joking around to other people, and then Jeremy felt like an asshole because not only did he throw Laura under the bus, but at the same time he told that he was basically going to put his hands on another woman's body. He didn't actually do it, and that's why I'm saying that him and Laura blew the whole thing out of proportion, because once AD and Clay said that they didn't care about it, I feel like Jeremy and Laura should have dropped it. Although the next day, Laura and Jeremy were able to communicate really well with each other. Even though Jeremy slept on the couch the previous night and was contemplating going home, the next day during their conversation, they both admitted where they went wrong and they worked things out. And I felt like that's the type of communication that they should have kept the entire time. But I will say, I don't feel like Laura and Jeremy were a good match from the start. I just don't feel like their personalities mesh well together. I feel like he's more playful and likes to do like annoying little things, and she's not really into that. And then on top of that, she's a little bit more high maintenance to me. She has a little bit of a snappy attitude, and I don't feel like that works well with his personality. So I don't really feel like they should have chosen each other in the first place. Now, what I will say is that Laura was sometimes a little bit mean to Jeremy. Every little thing that he did that she didn't like, she kind of nitpicked at it and made fun of him for it. I think she was trying to joke around sometimes, but I do feel like there was a lot of truth in her jokes that she did to him. And I feel like he could sense that, and he felt like he was being judged. And when Laura's family met Jeremy, they actually really liked him, and they told Laura themselves that they felt like she was nitpicking at him too much and that she was being a little bit mean to him. I feel like she took what they said into consideration, but I think that she's just really stuck in her ways. And I like Laura. I think that she's a cool girl, and I think that she's a strong woman, and I feel like she stands up for herself. And I feel like a lot of the times when guys meet a woman who doesn't back down, knows what they want, is independent, and they'll say how they feel, I feel like guys think these type of women are mean and have a bad attitude, and I don't feel like she's mean or has a bad attitude. She just told Jeremy, though, that she's used to being with guys that didn't really lead in the relationship. They kind of leaned on her for everything, and so she was really the one who wore the pants in most of her relationships, and so that's the reason why she brought that into the relationship she was in with Jeremy. Now, I think the downfall of their relationship was really this message that Sarah Ann ended up sending Jeremy once Laura and Jeremy moved in together, because she sent him a message on social media, and she basically told him that they had a connection in the pods, and that if things don't work out between him and Laura, that she's interested in trying to rekindle things with him and see where things go, and that if he's interested to let her know. And he kind of hearted it instead of telling her that he wasn't interested and that he was going to focus on his relationship with Laura. I will give him credit that he did show the message to Laura and he didn't respond to it, but I feel like Laura is right that he should have shut things down with Sarah Ann. When Sarah Ann sent that message, he shouldn't have hearted it or liked it. He should have just told her that he was going to focus on his relationship with Laura. And I'm kind of feeling like Jeremy was being a little bit manipulative by showing Laura this message, because I think the only reason why he showed her the message from Sarah Ann is to make her feel secure in the relationship and make her feel like he's not going to hide anything from her. That way she won't be suspicious of him. But she was very smart, because she definitely checked him about hitting the heart button on that message instead of shutting things down with Sarah Ann. So he wasn't able to really manipulate her the way that he thought he was going to be able to. And on the morning of the day that she was supposed to meet Jeremy's mother, he ended up coming home at 5:30 in the morning, and he told Laura that he was out at the bar all night long and Sarah Ann was there, and he went there and had a conversation with Sarah Ann, and then they sat in the parking lot in his car and had a conversation until 5:30 in the morning. And he really thought that Laura was going to believe him because he shared his location with her, but I think he thought she was asleep at that time in the morning, so he didn't think that she was going to see where he really was at that time. But she was awake, and she said that she checked his location and he was outside of Sarah Ann's house. Now, he claimed that he did end up driving Sarah Ann home, but that they sat in the car and talked, and that he never went inside and nothing ever happened. She's not buying it, and I don't think that anybody else is buying it. If he did not go in Sarah Ann's house, they definitely made out or something happened between the two of them, because I just don't believe that they talked that entire time. And I like Laura so much because she sat there and she told him, I'm supposed to meet your mother today, and now I don't want to because she's going to want me to say something nice about her son, and I don't have anything nice to say. And then she told him that she wanted out, and I love that she did that because it shows that she actually has self-esteem and that she knows that she deserves a lot better. Now, when they brought everybody together as a group, like the entire cast together, it was very awkward between Jeremy and Laura because they hadn't spoken to each other, because obviously they got into a huge argument and Laura said that she wanted to be done with him. Now, when the two of them did decide to have a conversation, he said that he didn't want to fight for the relationship with Laura because when he tried to text her to find out what her address was so that he can send her flowers, she responded to him very coldly. He didn't like that she told him that he did not need her address because she didn't want anything from him, and that she changed his name in her phone from fiance to Jeremy. He was really upset about that, but the fact of the matter is that he needs to take accountability for what he did and why she's so upset, and stop trying to make it seem like she's treating him some type of way for no reason. I love that she told him to go kick rocks with open-toed shoes on. Like, I just really like Laura. Sometimes she was a little bit mean to Jeremy, but I like her personality, and I like that she knows what she deserves. And at some point, Sarah Ann ends up showing up and things are really, really awkward. And Sarah Ann ends up having a conversation with AD, and AD starts questioning her about what happened between her and Jeremy. And she was kind of beating around the bush and not really wanting to tell exactly what happened. But I get it. It's not really any of AD's business. So of course she's not going to tell AD every little thing that happened. But I think she was lying about some things, because I don't believe that nothing happened between her and Jeremy that night. I'm just not really believing it. Of course I wasn't there, but I'm just not believing what she's saying. I know a lot of people are saying that AD should have minded her business in that situation, but you got to remember, her and Laura was really close with each other. The girls got really close with one another and they bonded. So if your friend is having a hard time with her boyfriend because another girl ended up, crossing the line with him, if you see her out somewhere, you're probably going to question her. So I don't really think that AD was that wrong for it. But at the same time, I do think that AD needed to focus on her own relationship that she has going on with Clay. Sarah Ann got so upset at AD questioning her that she started crying to Jeremy, telling him that she doesn't like that girls are trying to paint her out to be somebody that she's not, and said that she does not go after men in relationships, even though she did go after a man in a relationship because Jeremy was in a relationship with Laura and she did go after him, so she can't really say that. But she is right. She was just as much a part of this experience as everybody else was, and she did have her real feelings involved. But you can't pay me to believe that she never saw this show before. So if she really wanted closure and she wanted a chance to have a conversation with Jeremy, she should have waited until they got the whole cast together like they do every single season, and then she would have been able to have a one-on-one conversation with Jeremy and got her closure, just like Jessica and Jimmy did, and just like Trevor and Chelsea did. She would have had her chance as well. She just didn't want to wait. And to be fair, Jeremy didn't want to wait either, because I think as soon as he saw that message from Sarah Ann, he saw what she looked like and he was attracted to her, and that's the reason why he wanted to meet her, and he didn't care about his relationship with Laura. Jeremy could have handled this situation so much differently once he realized that Laura wasn't the person that he thought she was, because she kept picking at him all the time and making fun of all the things that he liked, because even her family said that she was wrong for that. Had he would have ended things with her at that point because he just didn't feel like it was going to work out, and then he decided to pursue Sarah Ann, then people would have looked at him a little bit differently. But he sat up there, stayed with Laura, and then went around and messing around with Sarah Ann behind her back, and that was wrong. And so he is a villain in this story. And Sarah Ann ended up telling Jeremy that she's not sorry for reaching out to him even though he was in a relationship with Laura, and Jeremy told her that she shouldn't be sorry and that he feels like he picked the wrong person. And then he suggests that the two of them go ride jet skis, and they rode jet skis and were having a good old time while Laura sat there and watched. And this time Laura did end up crying. She didn't cry the entire time that she was having these back and forths with Jeremy, but when she saw them jet skiing together, not caring about her feelings, she really did break down and cry, and I truly felt bad for her. And to me, that made Jeremy and Sarah Ann look really bad. I don't even know why Sarah Ann did what she did with the whole jet ski thing with Jeremy, because Laura didn't do anything to her. Like, Laura did say that she has an issue with Sarah Ann because Sarah Ann sent that message to him and that the door was never closed on that relationship. But she said that Jeremy was the one that she's more mad at because he's the one that made a commitment to her, not Sarah Ann. So for Sarah to sit there and say that she's not sorry and then get on the jet skis and act like Laura's feelings did not matter was wrong, and it made both Jeremy and Sarah Ann look really, really bad.